So yeah, I think we're just going to be kind of informal here between the two of us. So I've got some stuff prepared, and Aditya, just jump in whenever, wherever you wish on this, because it turns out we both were pursuing this very similar path here, and it's a really important pattern we wanted to share with the community here. So let me start. So the topic is account linking between Azure AD and Teams apps. What this is talking about is if you have a Teams app and you don't want to use Azure AD, you can, but there's a lot of reasons that you should use Azure AD. And if you've already got an app, maybe it's an enterprise app that uses some other system, or maybe you built an app with .NET and you've got SQL authentication, or maybe you used some other OAuth provider like Ping or Identity Server or Okta or you name it, right? It's still usually possible to use Azure AD as well. And that's what we're gonna kind of go over today. So let me show you the example, and this is borrowed from the AppCamp labs that I'll point you to later. And so I have here a very simple application with kind of a very basic login system built into it. So I'm gonna just log in as, let's say, Andrew. And you can see this is so insecure, I don't even have to give a password, right? But you can see that it logs me in and I can see my data, I can see my orders, so it knows who I am. These are specifically my orders. And that's all well and good. The problem is if I go into Teams, I can't get a single sign-on experience. So I have to click a button, and the button is there because it's a pop-up window, and we all know the browser rules with pop-up windows and stuff like that. You have to click a button to get there. And so now I can do the same login, and it works, and that's great. And I could declare victory at that point and be done. But then our presentation would be very short, and our users would probably be kind of unhappy. So here's my top reasons for supporting Azure AD. The first one, yeah, good old Northwind, right? It'll never die. Northwind database will never die. So first, it allows single sign-on across devices. So users aren't going to get any extra prompts. And those prompts can be extra annoying on your mobile device where you're trying to, log in again and again. Single sign-on, you could, never think about it again. You're logged into Teams, you're done. It also includes some key security features like multi-factor auth and conditional access, where the policies are controlled by the enterprise. So that's going to make the enterprise a whole lot more comfortable, even if your alternative auth scheme supports those things. Now you've got the user trying to come up with another MFA prompt, right? So again, let's simplify it for users. No extra usernames and passwords, no extra MFA prompts. It's easier for team owners who would have to then, if you're inside of a team with Azure AD, you could set it up so that membership in the team was enough. And so you add somebody to the team, they immediately get access to the right parts of the application that they need. In this case, it would be which ones are my orders, right? But the thing about that is that if it's a separate login system, somebody, probably the team owner, is going to have to keep track of everybody's alternative login and add and remove them as appropriate as people come and go from the team. So that's a big overhead and something that I think a lot of people might not really, be organized and remember to do that up front, sort of, and then later somebody leaves and they're like, oh, what was that person's login in this other system, so I can take away their access. And maybe the admin just goes, oh, I'm too busy. And now somebody outside the company, maybe who left under unfortunate circumstances, has a login to get into that app and company data that they shouldn't have. It's easier also for M365 admins who ultimately get held responsible for this kind of stuff. And, it's important for them to have a way of managing access. This is also required for monetization in the Teams App Store and for the M365 App Compliance Program. And not to put you on the spot, Aditya, did I miss any? Can you think of any other big, yeah, we should have done Azure AD kind of moments?
The user retention is much higher. I want to emphasize that again. It's much higher when they do SSO and support Azure AD. It's significantly higher.
Oh, that's a really good one, and I should put that on the slide. I actually got that feedback from partners as well, that one partner actually, they pretty much, the reason that they started their app and now there's more features and they're taking advantage of more Teams features was because of the Azure AD and their users were demanding it, and that's helped their adoption quite a bit. So with that in mind, we've got limited time. I'm not going to go too deeply into it except to say that Azure AD is at the core of Microsoft 365 and Microsoft Teams. A tenant, an M365 tenant, matches one-to-one with an Azure AD instance. And then all the users and guest users and the app itself are all registered inside of Azure AD. However, when you have a scenario like the one I just showed, you end up with kind of two islands. So Teams, Graph, all the data behind Graph. Oh, that's another one I forgot. Another reason is so that you can call Graph, right? If you want to get anything about the user, maybe you want to, check their calendar to see when they're available, or maybe you want to just get their profile. Well, obviously, if you're in the other island, you can't do it, right? So that's the challenge. And I'll call out some folks that I've worked with in the GPS team and the partner team have also run into this issue. The solution kind of generically, and it's going to be a little different for every application, honestly, depending on how it's written, is to link these identities. So basically, you get the user to log in with Azure AD and the SaaS application's identity. So for some moment in time, they're logged into both. And then you link the two identities in a database of some sort. So in this case, I'll show you the database in the demo that follows, but it is just a very simple little JSON-based database. And we're going to put the Azure AD user IDs and the SaaS application's user IDs into a table so that when a user logs into Teams with single sign-on, instead of making the user log in again, we're going to do our authorization based on the linked identity. So let me show you what that looks like for a user. I'm just going to pop in here and stop my my server and start it again, using as if I had just done one of the AppCamp labs instantly there. And now if I come back here and I log out and I refresh, I'm going to get a different screen. And it's going to say, well, please log in using your Northwind employee login to link it to your Teams login. So this is going to accomplish the account linking. So it looks kind of the same as before. I'm just going to log in as Andrew, and it works like before. We should probably take this log out button away because it doesn't do anything anymore. You can't, you're just automatic. As fast as you would log out, you get logged back in again. And that's it. Now I could go to my phone, I could go to another computer, and I'm never going to get that prompt again. Why? Because it's actually stored here in the back end. And if I kind of drill into here to the data, you can see there's this little identity map here, and it's taken the Azure AD user ID and the employee ID and associated them there so that we can just kind of automate that process the next time the user comes back.
Yeah, actually, and Bob, just to jump in here, this is an approach, and soon we'll present another approach as well. This is an easier approach to understand, but could potentially have a few issues, certain issues if you were to do it, but it's really easy to understand. It's a great stepping point. And so we'll present again in soon another approach. And Bob and I are going to present one that is a little bit more advanced, but it's probably a little bit more secure in other things as well. But
sure,
this is a great starting approach. Yeah.
And I know that, I think that a number of partners have used this effectively. Where I've seen it fall over is if there are dozens of microservices all doing the authentication themselves. Then, a lot of apps are designed with one single check for authorization, sort of at the entry point to the app, and this works fairly well in that. So if you'd like to try this out, you can go to Teams AppCamp, aka.ms/AppCamp, and go and take what you'd want to do is take this B path instead of this. So the A path assumes that the app already had Azure AD, and the B path, you'll see that you set up the non-Azure AD app, and then that's the transition I just made, was to add the identity mapping. So it's a pattern. You're going to have to kind of figure out how to apply that in each situation that you're in. So I'll just sort of wrap it up with this slide. We've got a hands-on lab with the B path. We've got the account linking. Now this has been, Aditya just wrote an article and a sample on this. And this is great. He goes into a little bit more depth on how this all works. And is there anything else you want to say about this?
No, so the sample illustrates the other sort of more advanced approach. And so that's the one we'll go through again later.
Okay, sounds good.
Let's follow up on any questions on the chat. And we are anyway hitting the hour. So thank you, Bob and Aditya, on that one.